Hi there, I'm Rob Clementi, the Chief Executive of 10, the Education Network, and I'm with Simon LaBlack, who's going to be presenting a webinar on the 11th of February next year on the subject of seller disclosure reforms and the new Property Law Act in Queensland, a very interesting and topical subject. Simon, thank you for joining us. I've got one question for you. After the 1st of August 2025, what parts of a seller disclosure statement can real estate agents assist with, and what parts of that statement have to be prepared by a solicitor?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rob. I think it probably takes a bit of time to unpack, but just really sort of briefly, comes back to Section 24 of the Legal Profession Act, which gives agents the ability to complete contracts and associated documents. But what it does do in that section there is restrict agents from giving legal advice in relation to those documents, and also providing, preparing or completing documents prescribed under a regulation, which is interesting because the disclosure statements and associated certificates are prescribed under a regulation, just the property law regulation as opposed to the legal profession regulation. So probably there's a thought that agents will continue to prepare disclosure statements, but they'll have to be very careful about giving any sort of legal advice around them. And that's expressly prohibited in the section. And some of the parts of the disclosure statement where that might be really relevant would be, for example, one of the questions is, there are encumbrances not registered on title that will continue to affect the property after settlement? Yes or no? That's probably not a yes or no question. There's probably, a seller's probably sitting there saying, are there? What does that mean? And there's, legal advice involved in that. So I think agents will have to be very careful about how they sort of approach the disclosure. I am aware there's a particular agency who's sort of coming up with a bit of a legal function, a disclosure function to sort of assist their agents. But others are sort of dealing with it, I think, in different ways. The only other comment I'd make just really briefly around this is if a lot is in a community title scheme or a building units and group title scheme, it's separate that an 11-page certificate is required from the body corporate with the authority of the body corporate. So now where agents might be able to just issue documents themselves, disclosure documents for schemes, this will require the authority of the body corporate. So not something that the agent can just do themselves. So a very interesting question. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out in practice. Yeah, I think there'll be a much greater role for solicitors at the front end of disclosure.
Well, Simon, thank you very much for that very interesting answer. And for those of you who would like to hear more on this important subject, Simon is presenting a webinar for us on the 11th of February entitled Seller Disclosure Reforms and the New Property Law Act. To register for that, just go to our website, tved.net.au. You'll find the webinar under live webinars and you can register online. And Simon, thank you very much for your help today.
No worries at all.